Sure. So this meeting of the California Underground Safety Board will now resume from yesterday's recess and is called to order at 9 o'clock. Secretary, please call the roll.
Lawson,
Here.
Johns,
Present.
Johnson,
Present.
Munoz, present, Simonian,
Here.
Sorum. Sorum absent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, before we start, I'll review safety information for those of us here in person. And in the back, can you hear us okay? Okay, good. Today we are meeting at the California Department of Education. In the event of an evacuation, proceed out of the doors at the back of the room. There's an exit door to the right, or you can walk straight ahead to the lobby to exit to the building. We'll return to the room and resume the meeting when the emergency is all clear. Meeting will proceed in the same manner as previous meetings, which will include public participation in person and remotely. We ask everyone please be aware of crosstalk by ceding the floor if necessary to one another and each taking a turn to comment. We will now review public participation and the public comment procedure for when the time for public comments. For those attending in person who wish to provide public comment, you'll be asked to please approach the podium in the middle of the room. Please provide your name and organization before you comment. For webinar phone, to enter the queue, use the raise hand button if you're on the webinar or dial *5 if you've dialed in. When your name is called, unmute yourself using the microphone button if you're on the webinar or by dialing *6 if you've dialed in. Please provide your name and organization before comment. And yesterday we included item 22, which was the Ziegler USA North presentation. So we're on item 23. So the next item before the board is an informational item on draft regulatory language to implement the Geographic Information System GIS mapping law. So Ms. Brandman, please proceed.
Good morning. Oh. Good morning. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, I am pleased to present agenda item number 23, which contains draft regulatory language to implement the GIS provision of the Dix-Day Act. This item builds on direction provided by the board at the April 2025 meeting, where staff were asked to develop draft regulations for geospatial data accuracy, GIS data content, and metadata data storage. This item also includes a draft definition of new subsurface installation, which the board approved last July. Since January 1st, 2023, statute has required operators to map all new subsurface installations using GIS. The statute, however, does not define new subsurface installations. Specifically, how accurate geospatial coordinates must be or explain which type of data needs to be collected. Stakeholders, including the California Regional Common Ground Alliance, also known as CARTA, requested the board set a baseline that explains what operators must do to comply. The definition of new subsurface installation clarifies when an installation is new, therefore must be added to the operator's GIS record. The type of installation projects in the draft regulatory definition include those in new locations where facilities did not previously exist, as well as relocations, replacements, rehabs, major modifications, and major repairs of existing underground infrastructure. Repairs performed during routine inspections and maintenance are considered minor, therefore excluded from the definition. A definition of geospatial coordinates has been added to the draft regulation. The term means that longitude and latitude coordinates of a location expressed in decimal format. The horizontal conditional accuracy regulation would require operators to field collect geospatial coordinates with a minimum accuracy of about 4 inches. The accuracy measurement would apply to all installation methods, including trench lift technique. The draft data content regulation requires GIS location records to be created when any of the following devices or features are present: tracer wire or tracer tape, marker balls, radio frequency identification devices, and steps. Another draft data content regulation requires attribute records to be collected when a new pipeline installation includes pipe rack, warning tape, coding, or installation. And when a new facility meets the DIG Act definition of high priority subsurface installation, that designation as a high priority subsurface installation must be stored in the new facility's attribute record. Lastly included is the metadata regulation for geospatial coordinates, marking locations of new subsurface installations. Operators would be required to include in metadata the date when the geospatial data was collected, the equipment used, the name of the organization who collected the information, and the data. Staff conducted an email survey in June to learn more of the draft GIS regulations, how they might impact operators' current practices. We had 3 respondents to the survey, and they represented a variety of operator types: a large telecommunications company, a small municipality, and an ag producer. From them, we've learned: number 1, all 3 are already mapping their new subsurface installations using GIS. 2, only 1 operator currently collects location records in the field. That operator also collects the type of metadata listed in the draft regulation. That operator's minimum accuracy is about 36 inches. The next thing we learned is the operator who installs marker balls or other locating devices with new installations is already creating a GIS record about them. The operator who requires tracer wires to be installed does not create a GIS record for it. Staff recommends that the board open a public comment period to collect feedback from operators on the draft regulation. With that, I turn it back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Brennan. We will start with in-person comments. If you would like to make a comment, please approach the podium, provide your name and organization before you comment.
Morning, everyone. James Wingate, USA North 811. I just have one comment about, it might just be a typo, but on the part where it's talking about coordinates, which is very important. It's math basically when you're laying a grid on top of something that's not a perfect sphere, but it talks about having 2 digits after the decimal place. I recommend that that's 6 digits after the decimal place, because that gets down to about 4 inches. If you go beyond that, then you're getting super small and it's irrelevant when you're talking nanometers or whatever, but 2 digits is not quite enough. So, but earlier when it talks about 100 millimeters, that's the same thing as about 4 inches. So I think those 2 just don't line up. Maybe it's just a minor typo, but just hopefully a quick fix, or at least to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wingate.
Morning, Mike Donlin, MD Safety Service. This is just a little wordsmithing. I would like to see the language simplified, because while this is directed to the operators, it's also going to be the contractors doing this under contract. And a lot of contractors, less sophisticated contractors will be doing this too. And when you put certain language in a certain order, it just shuts them down and they don't read it. And especially titles, which are non-enforceable language. So on geospatial coordinates, I would change that to say coordinates are the latitude and longitude geospatial coordinates. So you're not starting with that geospatial word that I think a lot of contractors are going to go, I don't understand what that is. That's in the text, but you're not starting. Under a new subsurface installation, which means an underground facility. Now in Government Code 4216, we say a subsurface installation is an underground pipeline. And I think for consistency, I would change that to underground pipeline and associated facilities. And I think that would kind of capture, I know with facility, you're trying to capture everything, not just the pipeline. And I think that would do that. Under accuracy of geospatial coordinates, again, that's a title, that's unenforceable. I would just say accuracy of coordinates. And you have geospatial in the text. So you still have it there. You're not taking anything enforceable out. But I just think I've been for 25 years, I've developed, forced, taught, and gone to hearings on language like this. And I know what people like to a great degree. So I think it just make it clearer and people aren't going to just shut down. And then for sections 2 and 3, I would probably combine those just under a title of record keeping. In regulation, that's when an employer sees record keeping, okay, this is what I need to write down to stay in good graces of the board. And so I would just change that record keeping, have A, B, C, and then change what's under number 3 to D. And that would be my recommendation, just to simplify for the regulated public and make it a little more acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further in-person comments, we will move to the webinar comments. Host, are there any webinar comments?
There is a comment from Charmaine Rose.
Unmute yourself.
There we go. I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, board members. My name is Charmaine Rose. I'm with Legislative and Regulatory Affairs at the Sacramento Area Sewer District. We serve 1.6 million residents across 386 square mile service area, and we provide reliable wastewater services that protect public health and the environment. We're the second largest wastewater collection utility in California, operating about 5,000 miles of sewer pipeline, ranging in size from 1.25 inches to 144 inches, with 117 pump stations and 34 miles of recycled water pipelines. We're supportive of a balanced approach that would improve subsurface utility mapping for public safety and operational efficiency, while being mindful of what local agencies already do and how we adapt to rapidly changing technology. We have some concerns about the proposed strict 100 millimeter accuracy requirement for all new subsurface installations. It could impact our construction and emergency repair work, ultimately affecting our ratepayers. And we're looking forward to continued dialogue with the staff, and we're optimistic in finding an effective path forward to improving data quality while recognizing the challenge and improvements to transparency and accessibility that utilities like Sac Sewer have continually strived to maintain. And we look forward to commenting and continued work with your staff on this item. Thank you.
Maybe we have another public comment from Sage.
Okay, please unmute yourself. Proceed.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yes, okay, Bob Sage, I'm the GIS manager at the city of Brisbane, and I just had a quick comment about the attribute fields requiring the presence of pipe wrap, coating and insulation. It just seems like with all the new regulations, I understand the importance of locating the pipes accurately, but that just seems to be kind of getting into a deep dive of things that maybe aren't necessary for relocating a pipe. That was just it. That was a small comment about, do we need to go to that level of detail for the location accuracy? If it's going to be in the record drawings or the engineering project. Anyway, that was it.
Thank you. That it for the webinar comments?
There are no further comments.
Okay. Thank you all for your comments. So now, would any member of our board like to discuss?
I'll go ahead and start off. Member Johnson and I are on the committee that worked on this, and I actually prepared a small speech for this because this has been probably the driving reason I'm on this committee, and on this board, just to kind of give you guys the background of how this whole thing started was, I was working on a job and it was in the field and it was on our own property, and our project manager slash general manager told us that none of the lines are live, just go ahead and jump in the hole and let's get this job done. We did not call 811 first because it was on our property, our city property. And this ensued a whole long thing where I was trying to get the drawings, the as-bills, trying to figure out like, hey, they added this whole new side to this, it's probably live electrical. Long story short, everyone's arguing over everything. We're spraying down so there's not dirt everywhere. And general manager's insisting everything's said. I'm insisting, no, we do this the right way. Turns out the line was live. We heard it sizzle when the water hit it. Could have been really disastrous. So this is extremely important to me because I almost lost the whole curve. Knowing where things are on the ground, knowing the condition, the status, that's critical. It's critical to everything that we do here. And I was sharing with our newest member that, you know, I've been here like an old timer now. I've been here for a long time, and we talked about GIS, and we've talked about how can we take the technology that has been available for some time and the industry has been using. How can we take that technology and not wait? Ask industry to preserve life, to prevent things from escalating to what we've seen in the Palisades, what we've seen in the campfires. Okay, those are above ground assets. We are now looking at, hey, let's underground everything. Well, where are they? Like, it shouldn't be an Easter egg hunt every time we go in the field, right? We shouldn't be having locators out there going, hey, we're going to do our best. We're going to try to figure it out. And and I always bring this up because there was so many milers that I touched in my career with those special gloves, right? That we were moving to a GIS system. And it referenced an oak tree. Well, those oak trees are gone, right? But we're still here. We're still here. And we still do maintenance work. And we still put in new assets. And we still run new water lines, sewer lines. We still do all that work. And I believe that we have the responsibility to the public, to the people, to take responsibility to where our assets are. We owe it to them. We've looked at cases where, you know, people maybe didn't call 811. And again, it takes a long time. Maybe locating's hard, but it wouldn't be so hard if we actually had records. And I think this draft language is very beautiful. It's a draft, right? It has been at least 6 years in the making of us talking about what steps would it take to make it safer, more efficient. How do we get our owner operators of the subsurface installations, the facilities, the pipelines? How do we get them to own that? And so there's a lot of work to do. I'm very interested in hearing, you know, what the public has to say about this. Maybe we open this up for more comment period. Maybe we open up for that, but I would charge anyone who reads this to remember why we're here. If you go down to the Palisades, it looks like a bomb went off over there. It's horrific. How many thousands of lives have changed? They'll never be the same. And this allows us to do our work efficiently, effectively, safely, and manage our assets through their life cycle. You know, that's the part I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about the databases and I appreciate, you know, all the comments that have been made on language and making this more accessible, understandable, precise. Those are all important things, but I would just challenge everyone that we were charged and we were created for public safety. And we all take infrastructure for granted, right? I don't think the people of Palestine, I don't think the people of the campfire take any of that for granted. And it shouldn't have to lead to devastation for us to take action that is effective and prescriptive. Operators already have to do this. How do they maintain their assets without it? And I don't want to know that they don't. That's what I don't want to know. I just want to make sure the public is safe. And we're here to ensure that. So I want to thank staff for this very well-written draft and for all the hard work you're going to do at collecting all the comments from the public. And I'm charging the public, anyone who makes a response, please keep safety in mind. If it is challenging, I challenge you to tell us how to make that effective and efficient and implement it. Not just stop it. Because I don't want to go into another neighborhood that looks like the Palisades. I don't ever want to do that again. And so with that, I turn it back over to you.
Comments? Okay, so, yeah, my take on this, draft, I think it is a very, very good start. Getting something out there to comment upon. And one thing about, where we're at and little history and background is, we are at the point and kind of the generation of the industry is to say, we got to document what we have now. As you build something, you need to document it. So I think, the details, we certainly look forward to hearing comments from the industry, how much accuracy we need. The 100 millimeters or so, I mean, it gives some flexibility. It allows contractors to, if they have the equipment, it doesn't require any special survey coming in. It's like, we just need to get a acceptable level of accuracy in the documents now. And then also the information on the metadata, knowing what these, you only get to see it one more time before it's buried, and then we're going to be relying on what's written. So it is important, things like the codings and, you know, so for the next guy to open the hole up and see the next person, to understand what it is. The more information, the better, because once you close the ditch, it's, you really want to know, you have all these questions come up. So it is important that data to include it. So even if you provide some, you can't get everything, but at least it's a good start. The industry in the future of you know, looking forward now into the documentation of utilities and utility engineering and the SUE process, we are starting to live in an AI world. So what used to be a couple of old guys scratching their heads and saying, "Oh, I remember when they built this, and this is here." We find some old drawings that, like you say, refer to an oak tree or something like that. Now that the AI process is truly taking that information and moving forward with it. So, yeah, anything we can have now, we got to kind of look forward to the future. So, the GIS platforms we're using, they will change. You know, we've seen, you know, surveying and stuff change. You got, you know, NAT 88 here or 83 and different surveying levels. We got to be flexible to handle that. But I think going back to this, what staff has prepared, has taken that into account pretty well. So I am seeking our industry and those hearing and to get the word out to get your input, because this is important, and we as together will build a better model, a better use for it in the future. Any other comments? Rebuttals?
Mr. Johnson. My concern is with the collection of, why do we records to reflect, in some cases, the trace wire, scare tape, warning tape. Because scare tape or warning tape is laid down based on, information that, hey, you need to let folks know at that time that we repaired something here and it's here. And if you're getting close to it, then you know it's here. But there's no record kept on scare tape or tape. Can't even locate that information. So why are we getting into that much detail requiring them to do that? Tracer wire in the pipeline industry is used for tracing, but in other industries it's used as a backup in case the can't trace the copper, right? Or the fire isn't traceable, those kind of things. But sometimes those tracer wires are cut, right? But no one's gonna go repair tracer wire. It's been damaged, so if it's damaged, but we don't know it's damaged to them. They're going to expose it. So I don't know if we get more into information that takes to subsurface installation operators, information they should collect. If they want it, I think they're collecting it. And maybe some of those operators have the systems already in place to collect the data. If they want it, they'll get it, they'll keep it. It's important information to have, and they should document it. Why are we getting it to? Information about telling it, keep it on the records. And I don't even know if, as far as the GIS required regulation, we went back and validated that all the operators know it's law, that they have GIS systems being used to that. Don't put that some series and paper records. That's my comments.
Yeah. Well, just, yeah, my thoughts on that is, right now, we've been, the past moved forward, we are limited on ability to locate underground with, electromagnetic and, GPR and things like that are developing, they're getting better, but, things like tracer wires, things like that, it does, anytime you have a, magnetic current system, you can locate and find it. So it's important to know what's out there for each company within themselves, but then to document it. That's what we're saying is we need to have the documentation, because when it comes down to locating for a project, it's a useful tool. So I think we want to keep doing what we're doing and improving upon it constantly.
Yeah, it's a great practice. So best practice, yes, you should do it. But to start putting things in regulation that you can't force anyway.
Well, I think we're saying we want to document it. So we're creating a process to document. Just the record keeping, we want to take over, because right now it has been that historically each company would have their own documents, and once you have your construction as built, they just kind of disappear in somebody's file. We've talked about having a global record keeping system, how we do that. Some good ideas, but something is going to come out about, I think the GIS system is the future, that we start recording this metadata and stuff on global position locations, and it has to be recorded, and somehow it's going to have to be implemented.
Again, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you asked some questions, and I think a lot of it has to do, so why? Yeah, a couple different ways. First of all, why would we prescribe something that we can't enforce? And I think it's hard to enforce anything if it's not required first, right? So let's just start with that. Let's start with the idea that we're requesting in this language that on new surface installation, that the public look at this, first of all, and provide comments. And then with this language is actually saying that we require them to keep track of tracer wire and tracer tape, markables and RFID. And the reason is when you're planning a job and you're giving someone, hey, go locate and mark this, they know what tools that they can use in this situation. They know that this is available. If it is broken, that is a work order and that's an internal operation, but they know they had it at one time. And if it's not, if there is something wrong, they know. Now they know. You're right. Maybe they won't take up the whole street. Maybe they won't fix it immediately, but they'll know. Maybe this person, maybe their skill set, they couldn't find it. So there's a lot of information that can be gathered at the time. They're already gathering the data. They're already gathering the XY. They're already gathering materials of construction. They're already gathering it's a valve, it's a pump. They're putting in make model serials so they can write maintenance plans in the future. They're already requiring this. The idea is now they're gathering it with objective purpose to ensure that when we go in the field to update our cities, to build more infrastructure, the people in the field, the first line, have the information that they need. And if something changes, at least they're made aware of it. So that's the idea. The idea is to give people, when they're in the field, the ability to know what tools they have, because the demand for locators to do so much work so quickly is unbelievable. So being able to kind of give them what is required, that's important. We already had a couple of issues where people were pencil whipping, getting the locator mark done. We do not want to take away an opportunity to ensure that people in the field have what they need to do the job and do it safely, so that we don't see, like we saw yesterday, or other comments where they take forever to mark. So maybe I'm not going to call them. We don't want that. We don't want explosions. We don't want HDUs being a threat, or ADUs to be a threat to the neighborhood. I know this seems like, hey, like this is just one aspect, it's so small, but all of this builds to the end user, right? To how it's being used in the long run. And every time we say, well, maybe it's not accurate, maybe not this, we have all these reasons why this doesn't work. If we go back to the core of it all, I think this helps. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the public thinks, if there's different ways, but why are we telling businesses what to do? Because businesses need guidance when it comes to safety. We've seen that. And that's why we exist. 4216, that's why our board exists, because they need our guidance to ensure that the public is safe. That's our job.
The conversation.
I would like to hear from
You know,
observers, if you think about it.
Members on here. I think it's a good start, but it's gonna be very difficult. As far as if you have one pipeline, let's just take water, for example. They got a water main going down the street, I'm replacing it. It's a lot easier to GIS that than if you have communications. Communications, there's so much communication underground, it's going so many different ways. So let's say you have a run going down the street, you're fixing one of those runs. If you GIS that one, what are we gonna do with the old stuff that's there, that's still live? So that's where I think you're gonna run into some problems with keeping it accurate, because there's just so much saturation in the ground with communications in general, like cable TV, telecommunications, fiber. It's not like sewer, it's not like water where it's just one big pipe going down and teeing off. So it's messy underground. So finding a way, is it the right thing to do? Yeah, but finding a way to get there is gonna be challenging.
That's a good point. Pipelines, like you say, are pretty easy versus just putting in the systems, but I think by this approach, we're saying you need to document it. So the burden is to say, you gotta document it. You're putting in a new fiber optic system, how do you, it is gonna go to a bunch of different branches, but somebody's building that, and there's a thought process that goes into creating it. You need to put that in some documented form that can be, recreated when you go out and look at the maps, so, or have maps. So I'd say that, it's important that when they start putting in systems and you're running a drill system and, you know, different techniques, you know, micro construction, different things like that, it has to be documented and it has to be, you know, now forward, we gotta be doing it.
But are we thinking along the lines that no one's doing it? Cause I can tell you, there are some that are doing it.
Well, I kind of took it as like saying it's complicated, and so how do we do it? And, it needs to be done and documented.
To answer your question, you would have to do it, so for the most part, even, you know, when I was doing little cities, I had, Mylars, like I've told you, so they're doing some version of document, but the technology has changed and now we're looking at GIS. Maybe the technology changes again and again, but if you don't have it documented in whatever we have today, there's no way we're getting in the future. So, like I've shared many times here, literally there was like, redwoods with a single coil around it that was documented in a Mylar. When we GIS'd it, eventually we replaced it, but still we were able to put that into the drawing. So I think it's being done for the most part. And maybe there are some outliers that are still doing the Mylars. Maybe there's still some with paper drawings with just the as-built, but I think it's a good move.
I've gone through years of some of these systems being put in. I mean, our cross-bore issues, significant things, because not documenting, just kind of blindly putting things in. This does create accountability too, that we put it in and it is documented, and there's responsibility that goes with it.
So from an engineer responsible for asking for as-built, are you requiring that data, metadata to be provided to you as well? And if it's probably the accuracy of that.
Well, I think right now we're setting the guidelines for that. It has to be kept. I don't know how. It's a big issue, and who keeps it in repositories and things like that are big issues, but it needs to be, the data has to be kept somehow. And, I guess that's part of what we're still proceeding with. So it's a draft, and that's a big issue that needs to be addressed.
Well, I'm asking from a design engineering perspective, you know, what are your hopes in terms of this information? Are you gonna be holding the operator with the subsurface installation, maps, and facilities can be accurate to what you're asking for?
But
What are you looking for?
this draft is just on GIS, that's what you're asking, or?
Asking for information to be placed on their internal maps.
For locating.
So if that information is now being kept by the operator, send that information out to a design request, then you're looking for that information to be on there, whether it's missing some things or the accuracy is now down to 6 characters or not even, you know, 2 characters.
As for today, if it was, you know, within 2 to 5 feet, I'd probably be happy to get that information. But in the future, we're targeting a accuracy. But as an engineer, yeah, if I'm doing a project in an urban setting and I have your fiber systems running through my streets and sure, they're in and out, I'm trying to put in a public transportation or a new sewer main or something like that. Any information is very helpful. It's on the drawings. It helps the contractor, the bid pricing, going through the whole SUE process. You at least have more information is better. And so it's going to be improving every year and every time we approach this down the road. But yeah, purpose and what I would be looking for as a designer.
And the person on the end said, what happens to the old line is really the new stuff. So we know that there's legacy things out there, but, the expectation isn't that, you do everything. That would be a hope and a dream, right? But for right now, we're just focusing on from here forward. We have to start something.
Remember someone. Yeah, I understand that concept of it. So locators have it pretty tough to go to see underground. So we go out there, we look at the maps, we look at the access points, wherever they are, you hook up to them and you believe you're gonna trust your machine with experience, right? So they're gonna have 2 maps now, or they're gonna have three revisions of maps. So is the new system gonna be on the one mapping system and then the older stuff that's still live, on another mapping system? So is that gonna cause locators to spend more time out there to figure out what's newly installed and what was previously installed, or is it gonna be all integrated into one mapping system? That's my concern.
Well, just my take on it is right now it requires so much field interpretation. And ultimately it goes down to the contractor out digging, so if we're telling them to dig and watch out for something but again, more information, more caution, everything, it improves the process. So yeah, there'll be probably more maps. I guess if I were to pie in the sky dream something, I would say it's gonna be in the future, you'd be able to go in your GIS system and pretty much see what the city block looks like with fair accuracy. So that's the starting point. You don't, just like our maps on the roads and stuff like that, you're updating it and constantly improving it. So I think this is partly looking to the future that way.
I don't remember somebody, and as far as the 4 inches, if you're trenching and you got an open trench and you're laying pipe down, you got visual, it's there. But nowadays, there's a lot of directional boring. With boring, you're using a locator to find where the bore end is. So the 4 inches could be problematic when you get into rocky areas where the bore will shift a certain way. So at the end of the day, you're still relying on not having your eyes on it, and you're relying on a machine to get to that 4 inches. And I think that also is going to be somewhat problematic.
Member Johnson again, like was mentioned earlier, new installations probably done by an excavator. And so they're, leaning more on them now to collect more of this data versus them actually just do what they normally do. Figure, plan, place it. So
Well, good discussion, and I think that's a good starting point for our next, getting public comments and getting people involved. So I think we probably provided you more than you need, Mr. Brandon, but, I think we're at a good point to proceed. Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to the next item. And so item 24, the next item before the board is an informational item on potholing standards development update. So again, Ms. Brandon, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, good morning, Chair, members of the board and stakeholders. Up next is agenda item number 24, an information item regarding potholing and the board standards for safe excavation. This item is a follow-up to discussions, workshops, and surveys staff have conducted over the past several years regarding potholing standards for underground excavation safety. Between August 2022 and today, board and staff have collected public feedback on potholing standards. Today, staff will present draft standard practices for potholing. The proposed standards recognize the concerns raised by excavators that they cannot rely on maps, drawings, or location marks. These standards Proposed excavators conduct a thorough site assessment based on all available information to determine where, when, and how often to pothole. Today's agenda item presents new potholing standards and revisions to some previously proposed. Specifically, staff presents the following proposed potholing standards. Specifically, staff presents the following proposed potholing standards: identification of potholing locations, confirmation of marks using utility operator responses and surface indicators, exceptions to positive confirmation for deeply buried facilities, documenting utility operator marks, potholes, and communicating the results of potholing, identification and protection of sewer laterals, operator response to excavators' request for additional information about the location of a subsurface installation, pothole depth, identifying change in direction and change in cover, actions to be taken when potholing cannot be performed. All but 3 of the final have been presented to the board, most recently at the September 2024 board meeting. The final 3 have been discussed by the board through public comments and survey responses. Staff proposed standards to address those topics. With the board's approval, staff will distribute the proposed standards for public review and comment, after which we will assess the comments and possibly make revisions and return to the board for either an update or final approval. Underground Safety Board staff we recommend that we publish the draft potholing standards for public comment, and that we would develop a FAQ to address potholing misconceptions revealed in the recent potholing survey. And with that, I now turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brown. So we will start with in-person comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please approach the podium.
Empty Safety Service. And just like GIS, this is so important. We talk about potholing a lot in my group. And guidance is really going to be great. I do have a couple recommendations under number 1, identification of potholing locations. We say using multiple sources for existing facility locations. I really think that should be subsurface installations. That's a term everyone's gotten to know over the last 20 years. And, you know, I think it would just be a better term. And then down below where you say to determine directing points of conflict, the excavator identifies potholes at minimum at the following locations. I would say at the following documented locations. Because they go through all these documents, the plans, the as-built, you know, locator marks, and it's not identified, you know, shouldn't be holding them accountable for something that no way they could know it. So, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further in-person comments, we'll move to the webinar comments. There are no webinar comments. Okay, thank you for your comment. Right. Would any member of the board like to begin discussion?
Reading through the member Boston, reading through this, great information. I think it's great to be able to take steps forward on standardization for potholing. One of my concerns is reading through this is the frequency. Is a little vague, and as an excavator, is that 10 feet or 100 feet? the bigness concerns me. We're looking at standard. So that's kind of one thing I hope we get out of public comment. So it'll be interesting to see what comes in. Looking forward to that. Other than that, I think it's great to see this come through. I want to see it to completion. Thank you.
I agree. The only other concern I have is the size of the pothole that being addressed.
You know, with the, well, we're in the board comment period, so I'm sorry. One thing about our industry is it's all encompassing different situations. Just if we talk about fiber optic, you talk about pipelines, everybody in their mind has certain kind of their industry in mind. So it is a wide issue, but I think you have approached it well with, just as Member Dawson said, that it's certainly a good start to get us, and getting the industry's feedback and everybody from the different is important, but I think we're in the right track. So that said, Ms. Brannaman, yeah, I think we concur that proceeding ahead is appropriate. Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to the next item. Next item before the board is an action item on the idea submission form revision proposal. Ms. Hastings, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board, and stakeholders. I will now present the idea submission form revision proposal. The Underground Safety Board launched the idea submission form in 2020 to collect input on underground safety. It was accompanied by an idea register that catalogs submissions and organized them by strategic objective. Together, they formed a structured, accessible way for the public to communicate directly with the board and submit ideas for review during a board meeting and for potential inclusion in future work plans. Since the form's launch, participation has been limited, and more recently, there haven't been any submissions within the last 18 months. To strengthen this communication channel, staff recommend that the idea submission form be shortened and simplified to reduce barriers to its submission. Attachments 1 and 2 of the staff report show the current and proposed versions for your reference. There are 3 types of proposed changes: rearrangements, revisions, and removals. The major rearrangement is that the contact information and industry rules sections have been moved to the top to serve as introductory information and allow for a more natural flow of information. For revisions, several questions in the background, idea, and data and attachment sections were altered to be more specific and relatable, to ask for more information, and to shorten and simplify the document. The changes are more personable. They acknowledge that not all concerns are safety related, as some may seek to address efficiency, and they directly ask for the submission of data and documents. Finally, for removals, several questions were taken out of the form as they were either more suitable for board staff to research, they were merged with other questions, redundant, or reliant on other questions that were removed. In conclusion, staff recommend the board discuss the proposed changes to the idea submission form and approve the revised form. With that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Hastings. But we will start with in-person comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please approach the podium.
Good morning, board. Should be on. Ann Diamond Diggler. I do like the simpler form for the idea registry. However, the question, what problem have you identified with the 811 system? It implies that the regional notification centers have a problem. Number of times the diggler gets a lawsuit because we didn't mark the lines correctly, I don't count that high. Even though Ms. Hastings, said that not all, concerns are safety, I do like the term from before, what is the excavation safety concern? And if there is something that the regional notification centers are doing that's a problem, that can be addressed within that. Both regional notification centers have ownership of 811, and the proposed change implies that we are the problem. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further in-person comments, we'll move to the webinar comments. Was there any comments on?
There are no comments.
Okay, seeing no further comments, we'll proceed. Thank you for your comment, Mr. Diamond, and we'll, any of the members on the board like to discuss or begin discussion.
First one. But I think this is like twofold. So you got unmarked lines and abandoned lines. I look at those as two different things. I look at them as you have unmarked lines that are live, then you have abandoned lines. If we're required, the ground is so saturated with underground stuff, it's, like I said, it's extremely difficult for a locator to differentiate between an abandoned line and a live line. So they are taught to mark everything that you see. But I get the fact that when a contractor's on site and they expose a line or they damage a line, now they have to stop working. They have to wait for someone to come out and claim the line. And then they gotta figure out if it's live or not. That takes a lot of time out of their workday and production. But I just don't see how you could identify all the underground stuff. This companies come and go, there's stuff all over the place, so there's always gonna be a abandoned line in your worker 99% of the time.
Okay, but we are talking about the form here, improving that, so. Yes, I do have, I appreciate what Ms. Diamond said on the corrections or making the form and to consider that, so I think staff, you can take that into account. And anybody else, we want to make it a useful form for encouraging discussion and items. I mean, we're, this is a liquid industry and things changing, and we want to be adaptable and recognize things. I mean, I think back in my mind, 25 years ago, coming up with the 811 call center and the whole idea, well, we all use telephones then, and now things have changed. And so we gotta be, recognize that fluidity and so ideas, and I think this forum is, that's the purpose. Want to encourage it and make it useful.
Yes, for staff, is the old idea registry form available right now still? Because we have a member of the public that wanted to make comments, so I just would say if anyone didn't make any comments, since this is still live, you want to fill out the old registry, please do. But I did see someone that wanted to talk, so since it's still live, let's use it. But I like the simplicity of the other one. The only thing that so there was a couple things with the old one that made it kind of hard where, you know, you started with where is the safety concern? I think that's pretty broad, but then when you had to do the 4216, what part of 4216, that's where it got a little bit challenging. But maybe just taking into consideration maybe a more general first question, because there could be other aspects other than 811 that people might want to comment on. Maybe they didn't get to talk at a meeting and they wanted to be able to say, hey, this was my comment, whatever I wanted to say. So I'm just looking at it like that because I think we've had two meetings like that where people had wanted to speak, but the public comment period closed and they probably had a great idea right after we were done discussing it as a board. They probably had some items they wanted to add. Maybe if there could just be something like that. I'm not sure how to visualize that, but I think that would be good because the worst thing is there are people that show up in real life. And then they don't get to talk because maybe they were nervous to come up. I think it's important to have that, maybe like a QR code that we have at the meeting. So in case you are a little nervous to speak, you have a way to put your ideas in there or something like that so that, until people get more comfortable speaking or sharing their ideas in real time before we start discussing. So that would be the one area that I would like to see the form capture is maybe I miss public comments and then I have something to say.
Johnson, well, I like the form, I like the changes. But related to the background in terms of, we have received these submissions for the last 18 months. And so we're saying with the proposed changes that this will require more folks to participate with a similar and easier form to use. But on the current list, when we first got it, we had so many things on it. Did we ever clear that entire submission list?
Okay, well, I think staff is looking for some guidance and, can we form a motion to take action on this item?
I think, I'll go ahead and make a motion that the board makes recommendation to staff to look at improving and streamlining the idea submission form to encourage more comments or more participation in the board.
I don't know. We just make the recommendation to revisit it based on this discussion and then present it in the future. We'll do that.
The board like, to ask us to revise it and then present it again at the November meeting, put it on the November meeting's agenda.
I'd say yes, and taking in, if there is, if people can use the form, present form to make any comments to do so. And, yeah, take it to the next meeting.
And I'm gonna ask for a QR code, so just in case people don't feel comfortable talking, they have a place to like type in their comments.
That's true, but I'm sure.
So no vote or anything required, and not even issue, we'll move on. Is that okay? Yes, everybody did. Okay, so the next item before the board is an informational item on unmarked lines, and scope of safety standards update. So I got this plan. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board and stakeholders, Tiffany Nguyen, Policy Specialist. And it is my pleasure to present agenda item number 26 on the scope of unmarked line safety standards. Since the board's inception, the board has been working on abandoned lines. Beginning in January of 2023, the focus shifted from defining abandoned lines and abandonment procedures to focusing on the safety issues presented by the unmarked lines that excavators encounter in the field. During the board's discussion of abandoned lines, one of the primary complaints of stakeholders and concerns was on the lack of standardized communication practices between excavators and operators when excavators encounter unmarked lines. Statute empowers the board to draft safety standards, but advises that those safety standards are not intended to replace other relevant standards, specifically naming the best practices of the Common Ground Alliance. Instead, the board's safety standards are meant to inform those areas without established standards. In looking at what the Common Ground Alliance says about the communication practices of excavators, excavators may report directly to the RNCs or contact operators directly once they have encountered an unmarked line. Under statute, excavators also are directed to report an operator's failure to identify their subsurface installations to the regional notification centers. Although statute is silent about what the regional notification centers should do when they are notified by an excavator of an unmarked line, it is in fact the RNC's current practice to resend tickets as an exposed notification. This is consistent with what the Common Ground Alliance says is a best practice for the regional notification centers. They should have documented policies and procedures for handling those notifications, which could be as simple as resending a notification to all affected operators. This brings us to the statute and Common Ground Alliance's lack of guidance on how operators should respond to that notification. Neither the statute nor the Common Ground Alliance give guidance as to how operators should respond once they are notified of an unmarked line, whether that notification comes from the regional notification center or from an operator directly. This is an area that is without established standards. There is no guidance as to if operators should respond, when they should respond, or how they should respond to such a notification. Staff therefore recommends that the board discuss the issues presented by this lack of safety standard guidance for operator responses and direct staff to focus the content of the board's unmarked line safety standards on appropriate communication practices of operators who are notified of an unmarked line. With that, I open the floor for further discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Lynn. All right, so we will start with in-person comments. So if you would like to make a comment, please approach the podium.
And I'm in Daler. Gonna soon start calling me James Wingate. On unmarked lines, once everyone supplies an electronic positive response, any unmarked line should either be not part of the system, non-pressurized sewer lines, drain lines, Caltrans, or an abandoned line. I recently spoke to an excavator that said they wanted to send out an exposed ticket because they had found traffic signals. The ticket had EPR responses for all that were listed on that ticket. Traffic signals was not one of them. The county they were working in is not a member of the Regional Notification Center. And it has on their permits that if they are within a certain number of feet, that they need to contact the county's traffic signal shop directly to mark the lines. Kind of defeats the purpose of the one call. The excavator didn't know about this because the general had pulled the permit, so there was a disconnect. As an aside, the county knows they should probably be members, but I don't think they're going to become one. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. James Wingate, USA North 811. I was just being a gentleman to let Dan go first. I just wanted to respond in terms of, I think Ms. Lynn's analysis is correct as far as the lack of, a lot of things CGA has gone to great lengths to spell out what the best practice is. This is one that is not addressed. What we tell excavators when they tell us that is they say, well, how long can we expect them? You know, we found this unmarked line. when are they gonna do something about it? And we say, well, we've, sent the exposed line ticket revision to all those operators, and we expect them to respond immediately. We deliver it as a higher priority. There's different flags on the tickets. Most of you know this already, but for the benefit of the public. Different flags on the tickets as far as how urgently we expect them to look at those tickets when they're getting hundreds or sometimes even thousands of tickets a day. So we expect the, damage or exposed to, or no response to be looked at promptly. But we don't have it, but as she mentioned, it's not spelled out directly about what the operator response should be. We assume that the utility operator is going to say, oh, we maybe missed something, we better send a locator back out. But we try to capture some details about what it is that has been exposed so that not everybody has to roll 6 trucks to come and have a look at what was found. So we'll ask, what does it look like? Is it a black wire, or is it a plastic pipe that appears to be large in diameter? Those things can save some time in the field, right? Save some truck rolls and pollution and traffic and all the other things we're trying to be efficient on. But one thing I would, this is not a unique issue to California. Arizona has a unique approach, and I don't want to misquote them. I think I've maybe said some of this in previous meetings, but something along the lines of they have to get all the utility operators agree to show up at the same time and talk about it. They all, this is my mental picture. I don't know how accurate it is, but something like they're all, having a look and then they vote on, it looks like it's most likely yours. And then somebody has to give direction to the excavator about, can they cut it or can they pierce it to try to see what it is? And as much as these raise red flags from a safety perspective, I think the excavators in the room will confirm that the reality is those things happen in the field about there's a conduit, what's inside it? Well, let's drill it very carefully, just enough to get through, and then let's have a look. And someone's trying to figure that out. And those kind of things happen every day. And so, if we want to come up with a process, I think that's admirable, because of course the scenario we're trying to avoid is, with abandons, for example, the telecom cable is marked, excavator potholes and finds the telecom cable. Then he proceeds to bore underneath it, thinking he's going to dodge it by 2 feet below and all is going to be well. And he hits another telecom cable. And then it turns out that the one he hit was the one that's live, and the one he exposed is one that's abandoned. Of course, we hear that story a lot. And some states have even gone so far as Utah, for example, has a provision where if there are 2 telecom cables, now this is not for abandons, but let me just explain. If they have 2 telecom cables and only one gets marked, let's say they're different operators, one marks, and then that same scenario happens where the excavator potholes finds one, but then hits the other one, and it turns out that the one that got hit was the one that was marked, and the one that was exposed was the one who did mark. Just with a bad luck situation, Utah law actually puts that liability on the operator who did mark, because he led to the damage by not having to. So that happened enough times that got legislated. That's not even through regulation, that's in statute. So to give you an idea of how often these things happen and how big of an issue it is. So I guess I would just encourage us to, I think the Arizona program's been around for a few years now, so it might be worth looking at as a neighbor who's close by. And Phoenix is a huge metro area, so it's one that will have some comparable applications to us. Thank you.
You. Seeing no further in-person comments, we'll move to the webinar comments. Are there any webinar guests to comment? There are no comments. No further comments, we will proceed. So would any member like to begin discussion? Member Simonian, I think you already discussed it in the last.
I jumped the gun.
No, I appreciate what you're saying.
What about this?
But yeah, if you want to just kind of reiterate your comment there, now's the time.
Yeah, I just want to say it's hard to differentiate as a locator, what's live and what's abandoned, and we do run into situations where there might be some telecommunication that's abandoned, and then one line that's live, contractor goes down, finds the abandoned one, assumes it's a live one, keeps digging, hits the live one. So I don't know the right way around it, but it is a problem. As well as the quarter grids, the operators draw in the quarter grids on the 811 to say we might have some stuff in this area, but there are times where there's new stuff installed, maps aren't updated, so if you're a subcontract locator, you go out there, you don't even get notified, but just say of a certain cable that normally you would mark in a different area, but you don't get the ticket for that version, and a contractor will expose it, and we're not even there to locate for them, so it makes the locate community look bad, they're wasted. That's all.
I think the recommendations from staff are good, but I think, our former member, being Keeney, talked about the spare, lines that were not necessarily always, they were sometimes treated as abandoned, but maybe not, they were future or in parallel. So there was some confusion about that. And I think that member Simonian is making reference to something similar. So I just would like to agree with all this, but just maybe carve out some time to focus on the idea of what, live is, because there are live lines that are not necessarily defined as live lines, that have caused a lot of havoc. And whoever wanted to listen to member being Keeney of the past talk about this, he went on for quite some time about how impactful these, this ambiguous definition is. I think this is a good report, a good start, and it's something that, the real Jeff Wingate, right, and, as he stood up, this is something that I think has been really near and dear to the call centers.
Dr. Johnson, I think this is frustration for different groups. Frustration on one call center, frustration on the actual operator that had to go out there and locate it. It doesn't belong to them. They have to keep responding to the one call ticket, frustration to the escalator that wants to just do his job when he gets out there and what he's paid to do it, to move on. So I like the idea of what they do in Phoenix, familiar with that, but I also was thinking here and saying, you know what? Is there a possibility of maybe looking at going back to the person who put the request in or the order to do the work, having them go give approval for them to go ahead and go around it, and then in the meantime, have someone work on finding out, identifying that line, and having them bill, pay for that. But until you find out who actually owns that abandoned or unmarked line, you have problems. Because, when people cut into a conduit, puts it in jeopardy in terms of being further damaged down the line. You don't want people cutting windows in the conduits. So particularly, it could be, gas or some kind of liquid fluid kind of thing there. So, tough situation. It impacts everybody in this case.
So Member Johns, as you can see, this affects all the stakeholders. And it's complicated. I've spent years on being on the Common Ground Alliance's best practice committee, creating the TRs for improving this the practice there. But as I've said before, leaving California, I think it's prudent to take this on and to come up. I think everybody's asking for some solutions. So I think we're on the right track. My might include things like, spare lines is included in the wording and stuff. And so again, seeking the industry, people getting involved on these workshops and to provide your input. And then again, Arizona, they've been practicing things. It's not perfect. But I think, one thing I do appreciate California, in statute, we have, 4216 has the Circle A line. That's starting to be adopted as I see it in the world, that at least somebody's recognizing it. There's still the issue with, ownership of lines. People, once they abandon it, they like to just get it off the books and not have to face it. So we need to kind of look at that and see addressing original ownership and recourse for delaying projects and things like that. It's a big subject. I don't have a solution, but let's keep working on it. Any other comments?
There possibly, can that be an NOPD?
Member Johnson, could you ask me that again?
And if possible, could it be an NOPD? Have our investigators look into it, and then based on their findings, they actually find out who actually it belongs to, present it to us to potentially look at the violation.
So if we receive a complaint or a notification that an excavator is excavating and they found the line that was not marked, could we look into that to determine ownership and then possibly proceed with an NOPD?
That's right.
We discussed this, in the past a while back, and it's something that we're still looking into on how we would enforce it. Right now, one of our challenges is we would have to grab that pipe, remove it, get it tested, see what that's flowed through it. We don't have something that we're still exploring on how to do.
Yeah, I think in certain cases, there are incidents have occurred because of thinking the lifeline was the abandoned one, and then I know of situations like that, which I think there is recourse that's required and stuff. So I guess we'll just be ready for that. Part of our duties that we'll see it, and if it becomes an issue, taking it on as a board. Okay, so I guess our direction is to continue working on it, and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. We did take a break here. Getting affirmative. So we'll have to take a short break here when we're ready to stop. So let's take 10 minutes. We are in recess. It says 15 minutes, I think, so that's why I said 10.
Great.
Yep, okay. Recess is ended, the meeting will return to order. This meeting, the California Underground Safety Board is now resuming and called to order at 10:43, July 15, 2025. Next item before the board is an action item on proposed regulations for area notification and membership termination. Ms. Brandon, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board and stakeholders. I'm here to present agenda item number 27, which proposes regulations to address two critical areas. One, ensuring operators maintain accurate geospatial data, commonly referred to as shapefile, for excavation notification, and two, clarifying how regional notification centers notify the board when an operator's membership is terminated. Today, we're asking the board to vote to initiate a formal rulemaking with the Office of Administrative Law based on the amended regulatory language provided. Under the Dixie Act, all operators of subsurface installations must be members of the RNC. However, the board was made aware of entities terminating their membership, raising concerns about who responded to located mark requests and whether critical infrastructure might be left unmarked. This risk is directly tied to accuracy and maintenance of areas of notification, the geospatial polygons used to determine which operators are notified of nearby excavation. Following public feedback in multiple rounds of board discussion throughout 2024 and 2025, staff engaged with the RNCs and stakeholders to address issues. So specifically, what has changed since the April language? Number one, it was the separated regulation. At Digler's recommendation, the new rulemaking now separates geospatial data obligations from membership termination procedures, creating clarity for all parties. Number two, clarified removal justification. Operators reducing their area of notification must now provide one of the four reasons. One, removal of subsurface installations. Two, buffer zone reduction. Three, asset sale. Or four, other, with an explanation. This change addresses stakeholder concerns about ambiguity and administrative burden. Number three, record keeping adjustments. RNCs are only required to retain the current area of notification and notification statements of change, not historical shapefile. This reduces their administrative burden while ensuring oversight by requiring the RNCs to share these statements with the board every 14 days. Membership termination notification. This regulation clarifies that when an operator ends its membership, the RNC must notify the board within 14 business days, including the most recent contact information, and if known, who assumes responsibility for the remaining subsurface infrastructure. These regulations are necessary to prevent situations where underground infrastructure is left unmonitored due to outdated or missing data, or because no operator is being notified. The amendments promote public safety, support effective enforcement, and provide clear expectations for both the operator and the RNC. Staff recommends that the board vote to adopt the revised regulation language and direct staff to initiate the formal rulemaking with the Office of Administrative Law. With that, I return to the chair, and I recommend that the board vote to approve the initiation of the formal rulemaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brandman. We will start with in-person comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please approach the podium.
And Diamond with Digler. I appreciate the splitting of termination and the current area of notification into two separate items. That was one of our big issues. I do have a problem with having an other as an option for an owner of underground mines to use. Only because when you have other and I've seen it for years in the dirt report. They will choose, root cause unknown, and then it says dug beyond requested area. Well, the dirt has a response of excavator dug outside area described on the ticket. But they choose one that they choose other because it's easier and then they can do an explanation. We found with our EPRs, if you have too many choices, being basically the same thing that causes issues and people choose other things. I do want a clarification. In the background, it mentions that the statement of why an operator is reducing area needs to be sent to the board within 14 days, but the regulation states every 14 days. This is going to be an issue as to send this information to the board because it's going to be 100% manual process with our current processes. And it could result in misstatements being sent. Thank you.
Seeing no further in-person comments, I'll move to the webinar comments. Host or any webinar? Yes. There are no comments. Okay, seeing no further comments, we will proceed. Any member of the board like to begin discussion?
Good job. I'm trying to recall when I changed my shape, thought I did it once a year. I think it was at the beginning or the end of the year. And so my only concern is with the 14 days that we're requiring the RNCs to respond. But it depends on when the renewal information that we send over to the RNCs. Be my concern if it's once a year. But I can remove things throughout the year, so that could be the issue. So we need to talk to that. But that's my concern. Most members usually do it once a year, towards the end of the year or the beginning of the year. So it may not be busy throughout the year, but at the ending or the beginning of the year, rather these two.
I guess the issue of the other, that Simon brought up, as I guess asking staff, not Ms. Brenneman, that a matter of taking that off, or could you elaborate on why it's there and guide us into what's lacking or missing that you would need to take account for?
I think when we were working through this and discussing it with different stakeholders, when we provide options for why things may be removed or changed, there's always a risk that we don't account for everything. The idea of including the other allowed flexibility for the operator if they found that the reason they were changing the shape file didn't fit with any of the previous suggestions. So I think the options that we have available to us is that the board can either direct staff to work on this language and put it back on the agenda for the November meeting. Or the board can proceed with the formal rulemaking, and when we do enter into that process, there is another bite at the apple where we would have the language presented for open for public comment. We would get that comment, review it, and then depending on if we adjusted the language or not, we would then go out for another 14-day comment period if we adjusted it, or we would move forward and we would say the reasons why we didn't adjust it.
For Johnson, how does that process, the rulemaking?
A good question. It's typically about 9 months is the fastest you can go through it. So when you start that process, there is that little requirement that it is, you do engage with the public and you allow a time period for the public to review the language and respond. Then you go back and forth. So typically that happens in about 9 months to get that process.
I think, remember when we've done this a few times before, and I think it's good to put it in the process and then collect, maybe do the second round when we start doing public comment. That might be the most direct approach. And it will ensure that this gets through the process under a timely fashion, because otherwise we're about this for some time.
If you're saying to
Yeah, I would say.
revise and then bring it next,
No, I'm saying let's put it through.
okay,
When it opens for public comments, we'll add that to the comments and we can make an adoption at that point, but it'll already be in process.
Member Clausen, I agree, it sounds like maybe 1, 2 comments out there, pretty close. It'd be good to get the process started, knowing that there is another bite at the apple to. So,
good. I guess my suggestion or option would be, on the other to have a mandatory or required comment to force them to make it harder to write more about it than the selected options. Okay, so we need to have a motion, to move forward.
So, Member Munoz, I'll make a motion that the board adopts the regulation language in attachment A and agrees to initiate the rulemaking with the Office of Administrative Law for the regulations language included in attachment A and adopt the resolution included in attachment B.
Member Clausen, I second.
And just for clarification, we're talking about the comment or the issue with the other, are we saying have that corrected before we see it, or just leave it at other and deal with?
I would be good this, and if you're comfortable with adding that note to how it's written, just say mandatory or required or something, so we move forward with that.
Yeah, we do it down the items. They can make enough now, just like an idea registry. And then when we go through that, they would incorporate that. We just need to make sure that they. Yeah, we're good.
So Chair, I would like to bring something to the board's attention for consideration. So in the language, the proposed regulatory language, when talking about the other as an explanation, it states they must also describe the reason. So the recommendation you proposed is already part of the language. If someone selects that, they have to provide a reason why they're selecting that. So if the board is comfortable with that, you could initiate a vote to move forward into the rulemaking process. During that formal process, there will be an opportunity for public comment. We can consider those comments where we may or may not change the language. It depends on how the board is feeling, and then we would come back and talk about that process.
Okay, yeah, that meets what my request, so it's already kind of written that way. So we'll proceed.
With the vote.
Well, yeah, so we got a motion and a second by Member Clausen, so please vote by stating yes, no, or abstain when your name is called. Secretary.
Watson,
Yes.
Johns,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Munoz.
Yes.
Simonian,
Yes.
Okay, the motion is adopted. Okay, the next item before the board is an informational item on electronic positive response, EPR update. So Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. Since late 2024, staff have been working with stakeholders and the regional notification centers to evaluate and improve the EPR code list. The work has focused on two areas: the potential removal of EPR codes that are ambiguous, redundant, or imply obligations not supported by statute, and proposed EPR categories into clear, marked, and unmarked to provide further clarity and consistency in EPR responses. To support this effort, the board hosted an EPR workshop in March 2025 and reviewed stakeholder feedback at its April 2025 meeting. At the direction of the board, staff held a meeting with the RNC leadership in May to further evaluate the remaining codes and discuss implementation of the category framework. At that meeting, the RNCs confirmed their ability to add EPR code category labels to code descriptions and expressed general support for the proposed structure. Following the meeting, as requested by the RNCs, staff sent a formal letter to the RNC's Ticket Continuity Committee on July 3rd, outlining staff's concerns, requesting adoption of the proposed changes, and expressing a continued desire to participate in the Ticket Continuity Committee to support coordination. That letter is included as an attachment to the staff report. Staff are currently awaiting a formal response from the Ticket Continuity Committee. Staff recommend the board direct the following: the staff follow up with the Ticket Continuity Committee if no response is received by September 1st and report back at the next board meeting. That a placeholder be included on the next board agenda for possible action should a response be received. And that the staff explore alternative solutions to ensure that EPR codes align with the statute and provide clear, lawful communication to all parties involved in excavation if necessary. With that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. So we will start with in-person comments. If you would like to comment, please approach the podium.
Ann / James Wingate Diamond, since I keep coming up today, with Diggler. When Diggler received the letter on July 3rd, we sent a request to all of the Ticket Continuity Committee members to set up a meeting. We have not heard back from all participants and their availability for a meeting to discuss the request from the staff. July is busy with board meetings for both regional notification centers, this meeting as well, and the CGA Summer Summit. So we won't be able to have a meeting in July. We're trying to set something up for the beginning of August. Some of the proposed wording for the description includes statements that could be confusing. An example is number 3 says mark. Site visited and existing mark adequate. Some operators use code 3 for renewals when it's that existing marks are adequate, because their process is to respond to every ticket, to include an EPR on every ticket that they receive. By adding in that the site was visited, that may or may not be a true statement. Also, number 4, no markings requested, is what it currently says. They want to add clear, no markings requested. Again, a lot that is being used by operators when the requests for markings are not for that operator. Secondary ticket goes out requesting markings from ABC company, and XYZ sends no markings were requested. Sending it with the meaning clear no markings requested when they've already marked can be confusing to the excavator. Thank you.
Bernard, would have any comments or hands raised? There are no comments. All right, so seeing no further comments, would any member of the board like to discuss?
Member Simonian, I agree with Dan's thing about, code 4, saying no markings requested. Adding that clear. That utility might not be clear in the area, but they're not called for an exposed line or a damaged line, so that I can see how that could confuse the contractor.
Johnson. I think the purpose of the letter going to the RNCs and to the continuity committees was to get on the same page, get aligned together, make it simple, and bring about consistency. So I think the request by the committee and staff to get together would help us clear that up. So I think it's a good move in the right direction.
Okay, no further comments, Yes, this is informational, so we're kind of waiting on the moving forward. I know you're busy in July, so I encourage you to keep pushing with the committee. Taking to the next item. Next item before the board is an informational item on coordinated statewide education and outreach workshop update. So this reason.
Good morning, Chair, board members, and stakeholders. I'm introducing agenda item number 29, an informational update on the Education and Outreach Committee's May 2025 workshop. This item is part of the board's discussions to establish a framework for coordinated state education and outreach. To provide a brief overview, Government Code Section 4216.12B1 requires the board to coordinate education and outreach activities that encourage safe excavation practices. At the board's 2024 annual education and outreach meeting, staff recommended that the committee conduct a series of workshops with stakeholders to better understand training issues from different perspectives in the call before you dig process. The committee is facilitating workshops that provide opportunities for excavators and operators to come together, share insights, and foster long-term collaboration. Today's agenda item summarizes the May 2nd, 2025 workshop, which was held both in person and virtually and brought together 38 stakeholders. While many categories of stakeholders were represented, the operator stakeholder category did have the largest representation at this workshop. Madam Secretary, next slide, please. One more. Thank you. During the workshop, the committee guided workshop participants through a root cause analysis exercise using the 5 whys method to explore the core question, why do people fail to notify 811? After discussing possible causes, participants selected 2 of those causes for additional analysis. Misconceptions about exemptions based on digging depth or hand tool use, and subcontractors not calling in their own 811 tickets. Attendees concluded that many people don't understand underground utility risk and that general contractors may not be ensuring compliance. Key takeaways included a need for broader awareness of Dig Safe Act responsibilities and improved coordination of outreach and data among stakeholders. The final workshop in the series was held on June 23rd, 2025, focusing on messaging and communication strategies. Staff will present outcomes at the board's September 2025 Education and Outreach meeting. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Reese. We'll start our in-person comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please approach the podium. Okay, any hands on our webinar? There are no comments. Okay, so seeing no comments, we'll proceed. But any member of the board like to begin discussion?
Thank you, congratulations, great work. There's a lot of people that attended. So I think starting with that, education, as we keep identifying, has been a huge part of what we're doing. So I just want to say thank you for your hard work.
Okay, you. So proceed on to the next item. Next item on the board is information on the 2025 Education Outreach Meeting. Again, as Lisa, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I will now introduce agenda item 30, an information item for the board's annual education and outreach meeting. This year, the education and outreach meeting theme is sharing what works, shaping what's next. And a meeting will be held on September 8th and 9th at the California Natural Resources Agency building here in Sacramento. For those that cannot attend in person, a virtual option will be available. Visit our website at energysafety.ca.gov. That's energysafety.ca.gov to sign up for our email list or follow Energy Safety on social media to be notified about updates on this exciting event. And with that, I will turn it back over to the chair.
All right, thank you, Ms. Reason. We're open to in-person comments. If you'd like to comment, please approach the podium. Any hands raised on our webinar? No comments. Okay, seeing no comments, we'll move to the board discussion.
Dr. Johnson. So this is a 2-day workshop or 2-day outreach meeting. 2 days.
While we are still working on the final schedule, this will be a 2-day event. We are looking at scheduling it similar to the way that our board meetings are scheduled.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to the next item. Next item for the board is board member public engagement report regarding any relevant experience with public relating to the board or safety excavation practices. We'll begin with board comments or qualified public comment. Are there any board members who would like to provide updates on public engagement? I guess I have to say that I was on the project meeting with quite a few group of the utility coordinating work with the Port of Long Beach as a major project up here at the rail yard, which I did kind of take off my business hat, put on my board hat, and just remind people of the process of follow the 811 process that basically hear enough people talking and there's just a misunderstanding of the 811 system, what the role of the regional, notification centers are. Yeah, most of these and group of operators and excavators, but they do think that 811 is the all knowing authority in the sky that will take care of all their problems, and they just and they don't know that there are people and their roles and understand the roles, responsibility, who calls. Again, there's like subcontractors are relying on 811 calls previously made. There's a misunderstanding. So I did kind of take the opportunity to share the process of calling your own tickets and things like that. So that was a public engagement, I guess you'd say. So that's it for police meeting. So we'll move on to in-person comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please approach the podium. But in webinar, interested in commenting.
There are no comments.
Okay. So seeing no further comments, we'll proceed to item 32. We will now proceed with the executive officer's report. So Ms. Brandlin, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I'd like to pass the mic over to our Chief of Education and Outreach, Jessica Redmond.
Thank you. Chair, members of the board and stakeholders, I'm pleased to provide an update on the Education and Outreach Program. The team has welcomed Brittany Friedman as an Education and Outreach Ambassador. Brittany's background in education, training program development, legislation, and conservation management will allow her to jump in and begin supporting our mission. 2 excavation basics enforcement training sessions are scheduled for those who received a mandatory completion of the education course as a penalty. Currently, there are 24 people registered for the October session in Riverside, and there are 19 people registered for the December session in Sacramento. For staff outreach, Anona Bonner, Chief of Investigations, spoke at the CAL FIRE Pipeline Safety Seminar on June 4th, 2025, providing a high-level overview of SB 778 updates to the government code, the initiatives that the board is working on in 2025, and information on how to get involved with the board and the board's work. April was National Safe Digging Month, and our outreach efforts resulted in 1,715 video views across Energy Safety's LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter accounts. Upcoming outreach includes National 811 Day, which is August 11th. Throughout the month of August, Energy Safety's social media platforms will feature posts, graphics, and videos promoting safe digging practices. Staff will be participating in the Cargo Safety Summit and mock strike event on Friday, October 10th in Irvine. And with that, I turn it back over to Acting Executive Officer Lynn.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Chief of Investigations, Anona Bonner, for an update.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'm pleased to provide a few updates with regards to the investigations division. For enforcement, there are currently 278 active investigations. In 2025, the board has received 982 damage and complaint notifications received through the end of June. And of those, 89 investigations have been opened. For the No 811 pilot program, which currently has 2 operators participating in the program, since July of 2024, the program has received 266 No 811 notifications and currently has 137 active No 811 investigation pilot
investigation underway. With regards to member termination cases, the board has received 13 notifications from USA North and Digglehurst. Of that, 12 membership termination cases are currently being investigated, and one has been decided upon by the board during the April board meeting. During the April board meeting, the board issued corrective actions and decisions. A few updates for you with regards to those corrective actions. For case number C241690007 with Washburn Grove Management, the board issued a corrective action of within 30 days of the date of the decision letter that the respondent needed to rejoin the original notification set. The corrective action update is that Washburn Grove Management signed a new Dig Alert membership agreement on May 14th, 2025, and was reactivated on June 3rd, 2025. For case number C241990006 with Rajan Pasha and Shasheen Pasha, the corrective action issued by the board was within 30 days of the date of the decision letter that the respondent must provide the board with a copy of the written procedures for the billboard installations that require excavations. The corrective action update is that Pasha Real Estate brokerage has submitted a billboard installation procedure. Staff is currently reviewing those procedures. Additionally, we were on our annual PHMSA audit came around, and so the staff has successfully submitted the annual PHMSA audit of the board's enforcement actions on May 30th. So that has been submitted and we're pending a response from PHMSA. With that, I will turn it back over to the acting executive officer. And that concludes the executive officer's report.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. So we'll start in-person comments.
Mark Donlin, MP Safety Service, representing Yukon. I just want to say, great report. I learned a lot today. I'm really looking forward personally to working with this board and helping them in their mission, and Yukon is committed to help with this important mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the webinar? There are no comments. So seeing no comments, we will proceed. Any member of the board like to begin discussion?
Secretary Johnson, I want to say I'm very pleased with the report, particularly the feedback that we got from the previous cases. Pretty nice. Thanks.
Thank you. And it's nice to hear feedback that they're hearing us and we're getting that interaction going. That's good feedback. No further discussion, we'll proceed to the next item. Is this the item you always wait for? Item 33. So we look forward to seeing all of you at our education outreach meeting in Sacramento scheduled for September 8th and 9th. So seeing no other business and no board members object, we'll adjourn the meeting. So the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for your attending today's meeting. And with that, that wasn't a door. Thank you.